Welcome everybody to the Celtics Double Take podcast. Dylan McCaffrey and James Kwan here again today. The Boston Celtics are sitting at 13-13, worst record of the season so far. After a nice win against the Raptors, we took bad losses to the Pistons and the Wizards. There's a lot to talk about, but first things first, as always, we have our best and worst takeaways from the week. 1 minute apiece. James, you can take this one off.
Yeah, I don't even need a minute, Dylan, because I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't have a best takeaway this week. I don't.
Yep.
I'm choosing nothing. That's my best takeaway. Nothing. So I'm just gonna go right to the worst. For me, it's the minutes distribution. I don't want to put it all on Brad because we're gonna go into it. We believe that Ainge and Brad, they have roles in this entire fiasco going on right now. Mostly on Ainge. Again, we'll talk about it later, but I don't like how these minutes are being laid out for this team. We'll go into it when we talk about the games, but a lot of guys getting minutes that shouldn't, a lot of inconsistencies with who's getting the opportunities. Again, we'll get into it. So I'm trying my best not to go on this 30-minute tangent to begin the show. So I'm gonna let you go. What's your best and worst?
My best takeaway from this week is Kemba Walker because we've given him a lot of hard stuff on this.
He had one good game. Okay.
He had two good games. He had more than 20 points twice in the last 3 games, and his shooting has gotten a little better. I liked what I saw from him this week better than what I saw from him on the West Coast. So I will take it. I'll give him his credit where it's due. My worst, it's funny you say that it's the minutes and the distribution because my worst is Brad Stevens this week. I blame the losses on him, and I just there's been no consistency this season. We've had 16 different starting lineups, I think, in like 25 games. It's been a mess. Like
it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. Let's just get through this Raptors game because then we can really open it up and talk about
the Raptors game. Like we were getting hyped about. Like we finally got that lineup we were begging for with Pritchard and Carson.
Yeah, no, that was great. But listen, this was a nothing win against a nothing team. Really, this team does not have home court advantage this year. They're struggling to find their identity. I don't want to like harp on this too much because it was a good Pritchard game. Kemba, in my opinion, listen, he scores 21. The thing that concerned me about this game is that he only scored from the 3-point line and with free throws. He did not make a single layup. And he doesn't really see, I'm not seeing that explosiveness around the basket that we're used to seeing from him. And that's going to be the last step for him. And we saw that a little bit in that Wizards loss, but a loss is a loss. Yeah, Pritchard picked up the slack. Semi Ojeleye had the best game of his career. It's funny because Tatum and Brown actually took a night off for once. They did not play that well. And in terms of how things could have gone, yeah, I mean, it was solid in that respect. A good, DNP for Jeff Teague, which is what we want to see. So there's some good takeaways here, but am I wrong by saying this is like kind of nothing? Like it's not really anything to take away.
Well, my biggest takeaway is that, Tatum and Brown combined for 29 points and we're able to get a nice win. Like they both had a bad night and we were able to put it away. Semi, great shooting. Semi's best game for sure. Pritchard also had a great game. And Kemba was able to, the 5 threes he hit were enough to put him over 20 points. My biggest beef that game is Carson Edwards only getting 6 minutes because I feel like he's been coming into his own a little bit as a scorer. We didn't necessarily need him that night, but over these 3 games, Carson got 6 minutes, 4 minutes, and 5 minutes. So I'm going to be bringing that up a lot. But the Raptors win was nice. And I like the lineups I saw that night. I think that Semi should start every night. I honestly do.
I disagree, but we'll talk about like going into the Pistons and Wizards games because we got to see a little bit of maybe Semi's true colors or the true colors of what Brad has been doing this whole season, which we've talked about a little bit. But man, what are we doing? Like he's punching the air right now. But okay, Pistons game. Saddiq Bey. Let's talk about Saddiq Bey. Because what did you see from Saddiq Bey? What did you see from Saddiq Bey? Because before I lose control completely, I want you to have an opportunity to talk about this kid because he had a great game.
I saw him go 7 of 7 from 3. I saw him hit a dagger on us, and I refused to give him respect the whole game until he ended up hitting the dagger. And I was like, all right, he literally just beat us by himself.
I mean, listen, he's a living, and I'm about to go into the whole take on Ainge right now. Saddiq Bey is a living, breathing reminder that Danny Ainge cannot draft anymore. I mean, he's Bill Belichick in the first round. Like how Bill Belichick can't use first round picks anymore. Danny Ainge is in that same camp, and they're saying the same things. And Bill Belichick saying like, "Oh, I got Donta Hightower and Devin McCourty in the first round, like in 2012." And Ainge hasn't made a great pick since what, Tatum? Like, and that's the thing. You got Brown, you got Tatum. You get respect for that, but you have not done a single thing well since acquiring those two players. Even the Kemba for Rozier basically handoff, like basically a trade. Even that's aged kind of bad. Even that's aged kind of bad.
I've seen a lot of guys saying they would take Terry back over Kemba.
Yeah, I mean, and Sadiq is just, no one expected him to be that kind of player, have that kind of night. He's a guy who's averaging 10 points a game. It's not like he's, torching up the entire league, but he has 30 points that night. And Neesmith is a DNP. So we could have gone Sadiq Bey. And I think he would have provided a lot more than Neesmith has provided us this season. And on top of that, we could have traded up about 3 spots for Tyrese Halliburton, who was sitting right there, who teams were passing up against. And as much as I love Pritchard and what he's done this season, I think we both agree that we would take Halliburton over Pritchard and Aaron Neesmith. I mean, don't you agree with me on that?
I mean, yeah, Halliburton's running for Rookie of the Year. I like Pritchard a lot, so I'll take Pritchard that we got him. But yeah, Naismith, his 30 minutes in the Wizards game was a shock to me, especially because in the Pistons game, we have no Kemba. The only person to score in double digits other than Tatum and Brown, obviously, was Tice with 11 points. So we struggled for points that game. Carson Edward gets 4 minutes. I just don't really understand. I feel like when he's gotten the opportunities to be in the rotation and get his shots, like if you give him 8 shots, like he can put up double digits. And on a team that is very lacking in weapons, I don't get why we choose to sit him. Like Kemba's out. Why is Carson not getting his minutes?
I don't know what. And let's talk about Brad and how he's distributed these minutes. I think Brad is just too smart for his own good. You know that kid in high school that just he's tweaking out before every test and he's overthinking everything. But you're like, dude, you got this. You're a genius. You'll make it work. But he's kind of punching the air right now. I mean, Teague in this game gets 22 minutes after your DNP. Pritchard starts after one good game. We both love Pritchard. Pritchard isn't ready to start. And you saw it in this game. He struggled mightily. And he not that he struggled shooting the ball, he didn't take, 10 shots and miss all of them, but he didn't really have an identity out there. He didn't have a shot to take when he's playing with a guy like Tatum, when he's playing with Brown. And it seems like a panic move. It's just over shuffling. I think we both agree that when this team is healthy, it's Kemba, Brown, Tatum, Smart. Take your pick of Rob Will, Thompson, even Taco, but we're not going to go there, and Tice. And there really isn't much that we should mess with that. Why is Tremont Waters, Jeff Teague, Javonte Green, Neesmith, Romeo when he's healthy? These guys do not play. These guys do not play on any other NBA team. They get sent down to the G League. And if we didn't opt out of it, they'd most certainly be there. So why are we playing them? Why did we play 14 people against the Wizards? Like, these are the questions we got to ask, because we both like Brad Stevens, but it seems like over calculation. It seems like paralyzation due to overanalyzation. I mean, I think that's what you're seeing.
When Romeo comes back, I need Romeo to play. I need to see Romeo do anything for us. But everyone else you mentioned, Naismith, like I'm comfortable to wait on Naismith until next year, because I mean, I was leaning on him to start the season, but we saw in the Wizards game that I don't know, like you can't just. Well, it's also not fair to him that he was just given 30 minutes, just dropped on him. Like he's sitting at the end of the bench, and all of a sudden, like a pile of bricks, 30 minutes falls in his lap in a losing effort, and it's tough. Like, and again, like we don't have to move on right away, but in the Wizards game, Tatum has 6 points, and in the Raptors game, there's got other guys that are stepping up and other guys in like deeper in our rotation that are able to give us quality minutes. And some nights they do that, but some nights they just can't. Like some nights, like we just have no other weapons. We're just running with Tatum and Brown ISOs, and we like just bide our time until the fourth quarter. We can hopefully make a comeback. And this year we're not making comebacks. I think we're going to fall below 500 sometime in the next week.
I mean, it's possible. And if you look at it's funny how when winning's happening, the flaws of your team they don't even get looked at, because you can still have flaws in your team and still string together some great wins. But when we lose, you realize this is just a completely flawed roster. I mean, it's kind of similar to that Knicks roster that they had last year, where it just doesn't make any sense, or the Sixers rosters in the past 3 years, where you're like, these pieces don't really work, or like what's going on. The Tice, Rob Will, Thompson, and Taco dilemma is 110% Ainge's fault. And it's a big dilemma because none of those guys are good enough to start. And we have to start one of them every single night. Brad is just cycling them out like a carousel, trying to see like which one is going to stick. And in his defense, I don't know what you do. Not play 14 people, I'll tell you that. I think Brad is kind of stuck in college a little bit. Listen, the Pistons aren't a good team. You can play the zone. You can. And it might be what's best, but he's so focused onto being the cutting edge, onto trying every little thing, into being this genius mastermind, Popovich type, where he's mass, substituting like 4 people at a time, and he's giving everyone on the bench like 5 minutes. It doesn't really work for us, and I think he's trying to do too much. And I think we should talk about Ainge, because you agree that Ainge has his paw prints all over this roster. I mean, what kind of toll do you think Ainge has taken on this team in the past couple of years?
I think that other GMs are not afraid to make mistakes. Like in the Sixers, they've taken some big swings in the last few years. They gave Al Horford a ton of money, and they did that with the idea of maybe this really helps our team, but they were able to, when they needed to, just like sell him off and like get rid of that contract when it was hurting them. Danny Ainge is very afraid to make a mistake like that, and it shows because right now the Raptors are trying to go out and make a trade for Andre Drummond, and whatever they give up for him, he's going to help their team. And if we did that, he would help us. But like maybe it's not the perfect heist of a trade that it's going to work out perfectly, and maybe Drummond isn't the perfect answer to all of our problems. But I don't think that we're going to make a move unless it's really, really, really going to seal the deal for us. And I think that holds us back a lot. Blake Griffin right now is being shopped either via trade or buyout and then sign. And not that he solves all our problems or he's in his prime, but just there's decent players that can be had if you can settle for a little less. If you just take Miles Turner and Doug McDermott, then our team is better. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, the Miles Turner trade is probably the best example of Ainge's stick up his ass kind of pretentiousness. Like, he's got to fleece him. And like you said, if he doesn't fleece him, he's not going to do it, which is stupid. We needed that trade. And I guarantee you that whatever we get from this trade exception, it's not going to make sense as much as a Doug McDermott and a Miles Turner does for this year, especially because he might decide to coast. He might not use it. He might just say, like, what's out there is not good enough. We're just going to carry this over. And I don't know what you do in that situation. I don't know if you just abandon fanhood of the Celtics, but I mean, it would piss me off. And I just think that this playing it safe mentality, if you want to pull up a football analogy, I mean, I admire what the Rams did. They said, we have a guy who's good, but there's a guy who's better, and it's going to cost a price. It might not be worth in the end, but we got to take a shot. And if you want to bring it back to basketball, what the Raptors did in 2018, that trade made no sense at the time, really, because you even thought, okay, you get Kawhi, you lose DeMar, and like, are you going to beat the Warriors? We all thought, no way. And we didn't even think they're going to win out the East. So they took a shot, and then look what happened. The stars align and they win a title. Ainge is never going to pull a Masai Ujiri kind of move. That's the painful thing about it. And we talked about this last year, like, who would you take? Like, who is out there that you would want that would fix this team? You're right. There's no perfect piece. There's no perfect fitting piece of that puzzle that we need. But there's certainly guys that are going to make us better. And I've been vying for like an Andre Drummond type for a while. The question really is, though, is for the people that say we should coast, that we should take this season for what it is, work with what we got, and see what is available later. Is there credibility to that?
When do we win? Like when what is the end game? Like Danny Ainge is not in win now mode, even though we're coming off of a conference finals appearance. Like, if we had made a move last year to try and like change up that team, maybe we could get to the finals. And you come off the conference finals, go into the offseason, like, all right, we must be just like one like small piece away or a couple small changes away, and we get worse. And now we're sitting here at this trade exception, getting closer to the trade deadline, and we're 500, and we need to see something happen. Like, something's obviously going to happen. Like, I don't think we're going to stay pat. I think that that's unthinkable, that we're just going to give up on this season. We're 13-13, and I just going back to the Wizards game before we go into the other
future
problems of this team.
Yeah,
Kemba had, I think, his best game since he's been back, or one of his best games since he's been back. He's 9 of 18, 4 of 7 from 3, 25 points. And it's a little upsetting that it didn't matter. Tatum has 6 points, which you're not going to see that often from Tatum, but the whole team was not on the same page against the Wizards. It's not just a problem of like, we don't have the firepower. Like, we weren't a unit at all. We're passing the ball out of bounds and we're making ugly, ugly plays. And it's, maybe it does just come down to Brad there. Like, if we get better pieces, they still need to play as a team and look better as a unit than we did against the Wizards. Pistons and the Wizards are two of the worst teams in the league. We shouldn't be getting outplayed by that much.
Listen, this loss was 110% on Brad. We played 14 players. I don't care what the circumstances are for that. If you play 14 players in a loss, I mean, is there a better example of just desperation, of pulling out all the stops? It's like trying to pull out all the stops in a date and still striking out. Like he cannot seem to find like an answer for who is worthy of starting minutes, who's worthy of good bench minutes. Playing Nesmith 30 minutes after DNP, we already said it. T gets 22 minutes after DNP. Nesmith gets 30 minutes after DNP. This is clear desperation. And Brad said it in an interview before the game. He was talking about how he's like, Aaron, talking about Nesmith. Aaron's in the gym. He's in the gym before anybody. He works his ass off. He deserves these minutes. And then boom, he gives him 30 minutes. I understand you're trying to reward hard work. And I don't doubt that Nesmith is trying, but you got to know what you have. And this is the ultimate you don't know what you have game. Because even this go back to our first game against the Wizards. Yeah, it was a blowout. So you play more people, you get other people involved. Like, I get it, but you can't expect that the Wizards are going to come back with the same exact energy, that you can just pull out the same game plan of pulling out the JV squad midway through the second quarter and expect things to work out. You're right. It's a big shame that Kemba's big game this year, which is just an average game for Kemba, for regular Kemba, was for nothing. But I think you need to go through this pain. You need to go to your lowest point to change. And this was the game. I think Brad has to look at the tape, look at what he did and say, I'm doing too much. I'm just doing too freaking much. Tatum is not going to have this kind of game for the rest of the season. I guarantee you. Yeah. But it's just doing too much. We both agree. Let's talk about players that deserve minutes on this team. Because when healthy, it's Kemba, Smart, Tatum, Brown, Thompson, Pritchard, Carson, Grant, Tice. That's it, right? Like, there's no other. There's no other players that really deserve.
Did you throw Semi in there?
I'm okay. Here's my
Semi in that list.
Let's talk about Semi. Semi's in this tough spot where he can have a good game once in a while, and we saw that against the Raptors. We've seen it in the past. To me, he's like the most tradable. He's in that package because of where he is among the whole Tatum and Brown thing. He just doesn't really. It's not what we need, and he's kind of, to me, he's a lot like Tice. He has a solid game once in a while, and I'm not doubting that he can be a quality bench guy. He certainly is. I just don't think it's what we need. I think it's just a lasting reminder of what Ainge has done. The pieces don't really fit together. I just think that Semi's in that basket. Don't you think that Semi is in the basket of tradable assets, that we get rid of him? Another team might use him better than us, but he's not what we need.
I don't think that we need Semi, but he is having the best year of his career. And I think that having just 3-and-D guys is valuable. Like, you don't need PJ Tucker to become like a shot creator, like ball handler. I think that Semi works well I think when he shoots a 3 this year, I am confident that it's a good shot. Like, I like when he shoots 3s, catch and shoot, and he's getting better at like dribbling and passing out. And he's also just a bigger guy. We're a pretty small team. So when we go with Kemba, Tatum, Brown, Tice, and then it's Semi out there instead of like Javonte Green or Pritchard, it's just a bigger lineup that will get more boards and be more physical. And Semi can switch on to a lot of different guys. So I like the piece that Semi is, and I like him in our rotation a lot. I want to give props to guys this year, because Grant this year is shooting 43% from 3, which is incredible, unthinkable compared to last year. Tice is actually shooting 57%, shooting 40% from three. So even though it doesn't show very much at all, like our guys are doing better offensively. Like Semi and Grant and Tice are all having better offensive years than last year. And somehow it's just not enough. Maybe it's because they haven't been played consistently. They don't get to know, like, okay, like Semi doesn't know, like, I'm getting 6 shots tonight. Semi's like, I don't know if I'll get 6 minutes tonight.
Yeah. Well, this is the dilemma. Like, you have to pick between Semi and Grant. They basically are providing the same thing. They're a big body
service.
Yeah, and you have to pick between that. You have to pick between Tice and Thompson, and you have to pick between
and Rob Williams, like the three of them.
And
this is Grant, Tice, Thompson. Like, I agree. Like, you can't just play them all for 12 minutes. Like, give someone some minutes.
And it's either that you trade one of them, you waive one of them, you do whatever you have to do, but it's kind of that like too many cooks in the kitchen kind of thing where it's gonna be a detriment to all these guys if they have to play this weird hopscotch game with their minutes. Grant to me is a kind of guy that he's a little bit taller than Semi. He's a little bit better and more equipped to guard other bigs that aren't named Sabonis and Embiid as opposed to Semi. And I think you can get more for Semi in a trade package. I think that he shows a lot more potential than Grant does. But Grant, on the other hand, I think is more what we need as a guy who could defend out on the wing and defend out in the paint, doesn't demand any shots, but is efficient when he takes them. This is the kind of decision making that we're not going to get from Ainge, though, because you're going to have to make these picks. You're going to have to go, you go to the left, you go to the right. Everyone on the left is traded, everyone on the right stays. He just needs to kind of go through the roster and pick. Are you going to go with Rob Will or are you going to go with Thompson? Because guess what? Neither of them can shoot out of 5 feet. Both of them are questionable when defending the best centers in the league, but serviceable otherwise. You don't need both of them. You don't need both of them. It's like I honestly feel like I'm talking to a hoarder if I'm talking to Danny Ainge, where I'm like, you don't need all this crap. You have so much crap. You don't have any nice things. You have 2 nice things sitting on your shelf, and you got a house full of crap. And you got to decide, what am I going to keep? What am I going to give away? And he's kind of just stalling out because he doesn't want to admit that he's wrong.
I agree. I think that the reason that Tremont Waters is still in the Celtics, I think it's just stubbornness. I think that it's just like, I know. I think Romeo is going to pan out. I think he's like a Semi Ojeleye is going to be like a starting NBA player. Like, maybe this happens eventually, but when the draft pick that we used on a guy like Grant Williams, we could have traded for something to help us when we needed to win 2 years ago. And would I be mad that we don't have Grant Williams right now? I guess, but I would like us to be playing for right now. If you're always playing for 2 years from now, then you're never going to win.
It's true. And with that said, we have to decide who's on the block, right? And I might want to let you go first because I think the players that I'm going to bring up might cause more of a stir. But you have to decide who are we willing to give up. And there's a lot of guys out there that are unhappy or just demanding trades or whatnot. It's kind of like this game, like I said, of like picking between children, picking between your sons, like who, because let's be honest, man. I don't love like I don't like think that Grant's game is great or Semi's game is great. Great. I don't love them on the court, but I love these guys. I think, I don't want to see them go, but we have to make some decisions. Who are you picking? Who's getting voted off the island?
So the guys that are named Smart, Tatum, Brown are staying. And
I agree.
Beyond that,
fair game.
Beyond that, I don't really. There's no one on the team that like you could tell me we were trading, and I wouldn't like be talked into. Like, if we're gonna get John Collins, then like we're trading Pritchard. Well, that sucks, but like we needed to get a good stretch 4, so I'm down for that. If we had to give up Smart and Brown for James Harden, I would have been pissed. Like, it doesn't matter who we're getting for those 3 guys. I'll be upset no matter what. But anyone beyond that, I think that you can talk me into it if it's a good trade.
Yeah. And I've texted you about this a little bit. Kemba is a guy that this isn't me saying that Kemba's never have a good season again. This is me saying that I'm like a financial advisor, putting on my financial advisor hat. Kemba's situation is going to get drastically worse in the next couple of years, especially if he doesn't pick this up. Even if he scores 19 points a game this season, gets his percentages up, he's still heavily overpaid. And at the same time, there are teams that are trying to tank that will take on bad contracts for the sake of future assets, which we're in a weird situation where we have guys like Kemba that are undesirable, but still quality players that have been on all-star teams. We also have some good tradable young talent. I hate to say it. I love what I've seen from the guy, but yeah, you're right. Pritchard, he's a guy that I think a lot of teams would want. And he's a guy that I don't want to see go. But if you had to package him in with a Kemba, with a Rob Will, another young guy who I think has a little bit of promise in this league, then I think it's worth it. And I bring up a guy like Shea Gilgeous. I bring up guys like Porzingis, because this is what we've learned from these past few games, that we're relying a lot on Tatum and Brown. And if we don't have a third guy step up, we lose. I don't think we can rely on for Kemba to be that guy.
When Smart comes back, it's not Smart.
When Smart comes, Bill Simmons joked, it's like when Smart comes back, he's like, I'm your third option. And everyone else on the team is like, no, you're kind of not. Like, please don't take that shot. 20 seconds left on the shot clock. Like, I love him to death. And we've certainly seen his impact in these past few games, not having him. I mean, we can't guard anyone on the perimeter without Marcus Smart. He's integral to this team's success. But like you said, he's not our third scoring option. And I don't see one on the roster. I think we need to make a trade. Whether seeing Kemba go is something that is not going to be as hard for Celtics fans now, but it's going to be extremely hard for Danny Ainge, because this was kind of his like big FU to Kyrie. This was kind of his big FU to Terry Rozier, who wanted out. And he's going to have somebody's wrong. And I think this is what we've gone ourselves into. Is I've said it in the beginning of the season. This guy is Jerry Jones-like, and the way you can't get rid of him, he has so much pride. He can't admit that he's wrong. He'll never listen to anyone else. And then your team's kind of screwed for the next like 10 years in playoff mediocrity, where like you might win a game, you might win a series, but this team's not winning the title this year, man, as it stands right now, even when healthy.
Yeah, we're not winning the title with this roster. Definitely we need to have like a $30 million worth of other players to do it. We needed that money in Hayward to do it last year, and it wasn't enough. And so without Hayward and with nothing improved, we're not winning a championship. Obviously, we're 500 right now. We're playing the Nuggets tomorrow. We might fall below 500, which is a really upsetting thing to think, because we haven't been below 500, I don't think, since like 2014 or something. It's like one of our worst starts to a season. The Nuggets, I don't know who's stopping Jokic, but beyond that, I'm not scared of MPJ against guys like Tatum and Brown. But Jokic, if Jokic doesn't score 40, then I think we have a good shot to beat them.
Yeah, it's kind of a make or break game. I don't think I guess the Nuggets they've been underperforming as well. I think that we're a lot like the Mavs. In the sense that you look at the roster and you say when healthy, like, how isn't this team winning a little bit more? And that's why I'm not giving a complete hope in this season. I think we've gone really unlucky. Like, an overall takeaway of this season is like, we've gone really unlucky with COVID and injuries. Like, this is kind of a worst case scenario. I think we need to focus up, get in perspective everything that's happening. Like, this is a worst case scenario kind of season. And if certain games go a different way, like in reality, like, we're 5 games over 500 pretty easily. Give or take some, literally, like, take, for example, the Pistons game, Sadiq Bey scoring 30 points is not going to happen again for the rest of this year. It was an anomaly game. And if he doesn't score 30 points, even at our worst, like, what we lose by, like 6, like, we're winning that game. And it's games like that are like the reason why we are where we are. It's not because we are in character a 500 team or a below 500 team. So yeah, you look at going forward, like, you have to have a little bit of optimism. And that's the frustrating thing about this team, is that on paper, why are we here is the $1 million question.
Yeah. On paper, we're not very scary, and on the court, we haven't been very scary for a couple weeks. We played the Hawks twice this week, which I kept saying earlier in the year that whenever we play teams twice, we're going to win the second game, but I've been proven wrong a bunch of times. the Hawks are kind of deep because beyond, they got Trey and everyone. You got Rondo and like Capella like on the end of that bench, and I'm looking at the Hawks to see like there's some guys with trade rumors on that team that we might be able to pick off of them. I'd like to be able to just get a scouting report these next 2 games. If John Collins and Rondo go off, we might be able to try and make a move for them.
Get Rondo back.
I'll take Rondo.
Now let me ask you 2 questions that both have to do with the Thunder, which, funny enough, this irrelevant team, but like, it's getting Horford back out of the question.
Gosh, Horford, some fan was like getting back to Boston, and his sister or someone like commented like, yes, let's make it happen. I definitely think that he would like to end his career not just like mentoring players while like half coming off the bench. Like, I'm sure he'd love to be on a championship contender again. So if we can get him but not be paying him what he's being paid, I'd take out Horford. Definitely.
Well, I think that the big thing about him is that he's so tradable for the Thunder because nobody wants his contract. You don't have to give up a lot. They might even take like a package of Rob Will and Romeo, because they just want to get rid of him. And you give him like a young big man who might turn into something. You give him a guy who's always been hurt, but we've never seen him healthy. Don't know what he's capable of. I think that Presti takes that over Horford. The other trade, which you shot down, which I think definitely should be considered, is a kind of like Kemba plus young tradable asset, whether that be Pritchard, whether that be Carson, and you throw in a couple of picks for Shai Gilgeous. The Thunder are willing to take on a bad contract if it means we give them some assets. That's what we can provide. I think that Kemba is a great guy to mentor their young players. And it's a great environment for him to come back from whatever funk he's in. And I think that Shai Gilgeous is literally like the point guard we need. I think I love his game. I think he's multifaceted. I think he's a guy who has already shown an immense amount of leadership in his young career. And he's a hard worker. I think he's a guy who gets along with Brad. I think he's a guy who gets along with Tatum and Brown, understands his role. He's played with Chris Paul. Is this not a home run?
Shai would be awesome. No, I love that kid. But the thing that put it off for me was the 3 first-round picks. I feel like 3 first-round picks is a haul for like Russell Westbrook, Paul George, James Harden. And that was just a lot for me to process. You give up Kemba, who was an all-star last year, and 3 first-round picks.
Two first-rounders.
I don't think that it solves all our problems to just trade Kemba for a guy like Shai, but I do agree. I want to make moves and get better. I definitely don't think we're trading Kemba. I don't think that we can do that because I don't think that he has a very tradable contract. And I think that we have a reputation for like shipping guys off before their contract is up. IT, Horford, Hayward, and now Kemba signs this deal with us. If we ship him off because he's damaged goods, we're not going to be able to keep signing free agents that want to come here just to be given up on.
Well, here's the case is that, like I said, Kemba's situation is going to get astronomically worse in the next couple of years. If we don't stop the bleeding by making a desperation trade in some kind of capacity, it's going to come back to bite us. And on top of that, let's be real about the Tatum Brown thing. It's not forever. It's not guaranteed. If we don't figure something out in the next, if not this by the end of this year, the end of next season, the conversations will be starting of how do we get Tatum out of Boston? How do we get Jaylen Brown out of Boston? It's going to be talked about if we don't figure something out. What a player like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander brings is relevancy and competitiveness, and also a guy who provides you a little bit of insurance. Because it's not out of the question that we're going to lose one of these guys. And listen, there's other trades out there that people have talked about. People have talked about a Jaylen Brown, Bradley Beal straight up trade so that you give Tatum like his St. Louis guy, stuff like that. But in my opinion, I think it starts at the point guard position, and it starts with a guy who's a little bit more flexible and could, be somewhat of a leader if we end up losing one of Tatum or Brown. I just think that this Kemba situation, we're going to be talking about it in a couple of years. This is a contract that is worse than the Gordon Hayward contract. Like, we have to remember that, and how much that was a bear. It's going to be worse than that. Imagine that, Dylan. Imagine that. Don't we got to do something about that, right? We can't just watch the trade hit us.
I think that I agree that we don't want to re-sign Kemba, like just looking ahead probably. So we're gonna need to trade his contract or like hopefully get a trade exception because it's like if we lost Hayward and didn't get the exception, or if we lose Kemba, don't get the exception, it's just like guys that we could have had over the hard cap or the soft cap, and now we'd be stuck without those guys. We have to just rely on our draft picks. I guess Danny's in a tighter spot now. He's got to prove his worth. He's got to put his money where his mouth is. He got one championship in 2008, and for a while, that's all we've seen. The last game we had before our next show is gonna be the Pelicans. Zion is having a really great year, and we have really bad interior defense. So I think that they'll be giving us a run for our money. But hopefully, 4 games from now, we'll be playing harder and have more figured out. But this has been a rough stretch. This is the lowest point of the season. This has been the lowest point of our last few seasons. So we're in the thick of it. We gotta hang on here.
Yeah, it's make or break season for Ainge. I mean, we agree it's not his job. He's a guy who, like Jerry Jones, is probably never going to be kicked out. But it is a season to save his credibility, and which I think means a little bit more to him than his job. So looking forward, hoping for the best.
Agreed. Well, that's going to do it for us this week on Double Take Celtics. You can subscribe on iTunes at Celtics Double Take, or go find Double Take on YouTube. Extra credit, follow the at Double Take Show on Instagram. James, you got any last words?
To quote Aang from Legend of Korra, it's at your lowest moment when you're open to the greatest change. I just got to put that out there. Keep up the morale. We said last week, burn the ships. Those ships are still burning. I still believe.
The Airbender has spoken. Wow.
True Inspiring words.
Inspiring words. All right, we'll catch you next week. Go Celtics, baby.
Take care.